All right, last lesson coming up, the swatch. You remember at the beginning, we typed in a manual stitch and row gauge. We typed in the 3 numbers when we were on the 4x4 inches, whatever you know that it is. Selected done, and it put it in the test swatch box. Okay, the master test swatch box. Now we're going to help you calculate, and then once it's calculated, to set it into this box automatically. Okay, this visual swatch doesn't force you into doing any number of rows or any number of stitches of width. You can do anything you want. If you feel like doing 20 by 20, that's up to you. Of course, you know, the wider it is and the more stitches and the more rows, the more accuracy you're going to have. I think 4 or 5 inches is fairly common. But as I said, it can be anything, including something you've already knitted. You know that you used a certain needle size on that garment. You know that the yarn was the same size and weight that you're going to use. It's at least theoretically possible, maybe not advisable, but you could measure it off a garment. Or if you had to pull it out because something happened, but you were going to use the same, you could measure that and not have to knit up a whole test swatch. Okay, how do I do this? It's pretty easy. You already know how to use the rulers. Now we have a ruler that in red represents rows and in white represent real stitches and real rows. This isn't rows per inch. This is number of stitches and number of rows. Okay, pick up your test swatch, count off some number of rows. Let's say you decided to count, well, and you can do this anyway. You can count the number of rows and put that in and then measure that number of rows and say 30 rows took 3 1/4 inches. Or you could measure a certain section and it was 5 inches you measured. There's the 5 right down there, and there's the 5 that I put in. Now count the number of rows in those 5 inches, and down at the bottom put in how many rows were in that 5 inches. So you can go either way here, and these can be low or high numbers as long as the dimension here is represented by how many rows are in that dimension, or the rows here are represented by how wide in inches or centimeters it was. Now, if that doesn't confuse you, it's really simple. You're just measuring the widths of your garment in 2 ways, with stitches and in inches, or with stitches and centimeters. Either way, you're showing me how many stitches per inch. And that number now comes up automatically at the top. If you know you have all your dimensions of your swatch correct, you look up here, see if that makes sense. That's always a good thing. 4 inches, 36. It's exactly 4 inches, so it should be 36 stitches per inch. Well, how about that? It's right. So you know that this gauge is probably calculated pretty close. In fact, it better be. Now, you look over here, though, and it's 22.3. That's not right. Well, that's what we put in before when we did it manually. So watch what happens. This is 22, and this is 20, and these answers are 30. We click with our fingers. We touch set. It shows us here in text that those have been put in. If you look, they've changed from the 22 to the 33.6. And you go in a new screen, and those new numbers are still there. You shut off your Touch and Go Junior, turn it back on. Let's see what's there. It remembered. Those numbers never go away. Just like if you're knitting in centimeters, when you close it down, bring it back up, it still remembers that you were in centimeters or inches, whichever you were in. Okay? One little other clue has the question mark you've been wondering about the whole time. Yes, I'm going to tell you. It's simply a way of a textual overlay of what each of these elements on the screen accomplishes. This shows the number of rows measured, the length of rows, all the things I just was repeating are shown there for a reminder. If you move away from it and come back, they'll be shut off. All the screens have them. They're there to help you to understand what's going on. Okay? Hope you enjoy the program.